My name is Master Danny Lee, and I started Taekwondo when I was 13 years old as an unathletic kid who couldn't even win a sparring class, to becoming the 2024 US National Champion and ranked #1 in the under 74 kilogram class that year. So every day, I get a ton of questions asking about how to improve in Taekwondo sparring. Questions like, how do I fight against a taller or more aggressive opponent? Why aren't my kicks scoring on the PSS system like Daedo or KPNP? How to stop feeling nervous before a fight? How do I set up a spinning back hook kick or a tornado kick? And how to improve the power of my kicks, especially cut kicks. So today, I'm gonna be dedicating this special Q&A session in order to answer everything you need to know to level up your sparring game. I'm gonna be doing my very best to make sure every answer is as practical and tactical as possible, so that you, watching from your house, can immediately apply these techniques in your next sparring session. Let's get started. So this first one is probably the most commonly asked question that I get: how to fight a taller opponent. So for me, if I'm fighting anything above 68 kilograms, like 74, almost everyone is gonna be taller than me. When I'm going to fight these opponents, the biggest thing that I have to focus on is to not give up ground to them. You have to understand when fighting someone taller than you, that moving back puts you at a disadvantage every single time because you're moving out of your range and giving them space to use their front leg. So I want you guys to first think about this. Imagine you have your range, right? The amount of space that you can reach, and it creates a bubble. Right? So me as the shorter fighter, I have a smaller bubble that I could reach than the taller fighter. So if I'm moving backwards, I'm consistently not putting myself where my bubble can reach theirs, and I'm consistently staying in a range where they can only touch me. So in order to get into your range, you have to be able to get past theirs without getting scored on, right? I don't want to be running into a cut as I'm going in. I don't want to be running into an upright to the face as I'm going in, right? So I have to be able to be offensive, but also have a really good and sound defense, right? So what I mean by that is thinking about cancels, right? My front leg cancels. When that front leg comes, right, I want to be able to block and negate whatever that's coming at me. I want to be able to have a good front hand defense as well. If I'm stuffing the leg down there, or if it's coming up high, I have my front hand up high so it's not touching me. I can also use my knee shield, a punch, or offbeat timing, so that once you make it to the inside, you can really use and utilize that opportunity to the best of your abilities, right? So if I make it to the inside and I did all of that work, I don't want to just be sticking there and standing there, right? A lot of times I see shorter fighters, they do all this work. They do all these motion, these fakes, right? These angles, but then they finally make it to the inside without getting scored on, and they're not doing anything. So you want to make sure once you get past that outer range bubble, which is normally the hardest thing to do when you're fighting someone that's taller than you, you have to be working on the inside. So first we're going to be covering motions.
Cover.
Nice.
You want to have them on their back leg for the majority of the match, if possible the whole match. So what does that mean? I don't want them to be proactive to me. I want them to be reactive to me. I want them to be waiting for me, right? They can't catch their timing and they're just constantly lifting their leg or they're reacting because I'm giving them fakes, I'm giving them motions, right? So they're not sure when I'm gonna be coming in, right? So once I can tell that they're being reactive to me, then I can use that offbeat timing.
Offbeat. Gotcha!
Or I can use that knee shield. I could use that punch.
Gotcha!
To get to the inside, and it's harder to read me, thus giving them a lower chance to score as I come into the inside, into my bubble, my range, right? The next thing we're gonna cover is angles. So you don't wanna use those angles like you're floating around the edge of the ring. So when they're hitting me or they're kicking at me with that front leg, I don't wanna be giving them space, right? It looks cool, and I've seen like a lot of fighters fight like this, sometimes successful, but again, statistically, if you're at the edge of the ring, you're either gonna get flicked with a headshot or a body shot, or you're gonna get caught on the way in, right? So even if I have great footwork, statistically wise, I have to be going into him to score. And if there's a good front leg fighter and he's not overreaching for you every time, he's gonna know that you have to come in and he's gonna be able to get that dinky headshot or that flick to the body, right? And especially with the PSS system, you can just get so much as scraped and it's gonna go in. So you don't wanna be taking that chance. Instead of that, you want to be using these angles either before you kick, right? So instead of just staying linear, forward, back, right? Where I'm just going into the opponent. Maybe after a few times, they can read that, they're gonna catch me. So maybe before I kick, I could take a step to the side, or I could take a step to this side, right? And then I can go in. And then after I work the inside, right, I punch, get to the inside, use those inside kicks, right? Then afterwards, instead of pulling out and then getting caught, I could pull to the side, and then again, he has to reset to me. I'm being proactive and I'm keeping him reactive. The only time that I would say you take a step back or you take an angle backwards, right, is if you feel like, oh dang, I wasn't ready for this situation. He got his foot out first, right, and I wasn't able to react in time. I wasn't able to get my cancel up and my defense ready in time. So yes, I have no other choice. I can't just stand there. Okay, yeah, I take the angle and I take a step back. But as soon as I take that angle and I take the step back, again, I want to go back into that proactive mode so I could keep the pressure at him and then I keep him on his back foot. So then to go over what we just said, right? As a shorter fighter, fighting someone that's taller than me, I want to be proactive, right? I want to be creating the situations first. I want to not give them any space. I don't want to be giving them range. I want to be the one that's coming into them. I want to be using angles proactively, right? So I'm not reacting to them and I'm not staying at the edge of the ring. I'm using those to kind of get him turning to me first, and then I use that offbeat timing to be able to take advantage of it. And then lastly, when I get to the inside, I want to be throwing it as many shots as possible so I could really take advantage of me getting past that front line of defense that they have. So the next question is crucial to be successful in your sparring career. And that's, how do I stop feeling nervous before a fight? So this comes down more to mental training. Being nervous before a fight is normal, but you have to learn how to control it. So there's a John Jones quote that I really like where he says, he always gets the butterflies before the fight, but he always gets them to fly in formation. So I want you guys to think about any other high pressure situation. Maybe it's your first day at a job and you probably feel nervous, right? But as the time goes on, you'll gain experience, and then from that experience, you'll be able to perform more comfortably. The dilemma is with beginner starting Taekwondo athletes, you have to be able to understand that there's very little to no experience in the ring starting off, right? So it's hard to get comfortable, especially when fighting feels so foreign to you. So this is where mental image training, it comes into play. By just imagining that you're fighting, your brain will become more comfortable with the concept of it, thus translating into less nervousness during your fights. So if you imagine yourself fighting a specific person 1,000 times before you fight them, when you step in the ring, you'll feel like you've already been there before, and you'll be able to stay calm during those high pressure moments. So I'm gonna give you guys a little tip that I've used throughout my entire career, and it's greatly improved my performance during my fights. One thing we all need is sleep, right? So before you go to sleep every day, imagine yourself stepping into the ring, and now how the mass feel under your feet, how the pressure will feel once the referee says ready, and then the different situations that could occur. Doing this alone will double, if not triple, the amount of time that your brain will be able to experience these high stress fight related situations, so that by the time you actually step in a ring, it feels like you've already been there before. So what are the pros and cons and differences between closed and open stances? First, I'm gonna explain what open and closed stance is with you. So to start off with open stance, right? I have my right leg back, he has his left leg back, we're open like a bow. Same thing for the other side. For closed stance, we're gonna have our same leg behind us. So if he has his right leg back, I also have my right leg back. This is counting as a closed stance. Now, when it comes to pros and cons, what you first have to do is assess your own strength and weaknesses, right? Are you a taller fighter? Are you a shorter fighter? Are you better at inside work? Are you better at spinning, right? A lot of factors come down to it. So for example, right, if I'm a shorter fighter, most of the times I would recommend trying to stay in an open stance, right? So if I'm shorter than my opponent over here, right, I want to make sure that I can stay in open stance. So I have this backhand punch when I want to use it, boom, right? I'm able to use my back leg to the body or to the face, and I could still use my front leg as well. If it's in a closed stance, it's a little bit harder to use that back leg. Now, if I'm a spinning fighter, right, I like to spin a lot. It's hard to spin in this open stance because I'm gonna run into either an op-out, or I'm gonna run into a cut, or I'm not able to score on this back side over here, right? So maybe I wanna switch to the other stance so that if he lifts his front leg, right, I'm able to, boom, spin under it. But then you also have to take into account that some fighters, they only like to fight in one stance. So like, let's say that you only like to fight in the left stance, you only like to fight in the right stance. That means that you as a fighter have to develop not only one open stance or one closed stance, you have to be able to fight in both so you could stick to your stance that you're comfortable in. How can I read my opponent and adjust and adapt during the middle of the fight? So being able to read and adapt to an opponent requires you to be calm during the fight. So you're not only focusing on yourself, but you're also able to focus on what they're doing as well. Before it was best of 2 rounds, it used to be just 3 rounds continuous, right? And then it's whoever has the highest score at the end of the 3. So this gave you a good 1 or 2 rounds to be able to take it slow, read what they're doing, and then it came down to the 3rd round. But today, in the modern game, with it being best out of 2 rounds, or best out of 3 rounds, first person to 2, it requires you to be able to read and adapt like right there, because each round counts. So I would spend the first 15 to 30 seconds not only focusing on what you want to do, but also throw some fakes in there, throw them front legs out and see how they react, right? If they're meeting you with a lot of pressure, they're trying to spam you with the kicks, they're trying to come at you, then you know that you have to meet them in the middle. You can't be getting pressure to the corner of the edges. You have to match that pressure that you're being given. If they're being a little bit more lax on their back leg and they just try to lift that front leg with either like an appa or a front leg cut kick, right? As you're coming in, you know that you have to be careful on the way in because that's all they're aiming for. So it always helps to have a good coach in your corner that will be able to feed you this information in real time so you could adapt a little bit easier. But even if you don't have a coach, you can always look back into your old footage and see the key moments of where your opponent starts doing a certain action or a certain style. And then once you start analyzing that style or analyzing those keys, when you step into the match, it'll be a little bit easier to read it when it happens. So what are the most effective feints and fakes to be able to trip my opponent? When you're using fakes and feints, I'd like to break it down into 2 different categories. That's gonna be non-kicking and also kicking. Faking and feinting has been a big part of my career, so I always like to emphasize putting that into your game. The first one would be non-kicking. So you're trying to replicate the motion that it looks like before you're going to kick. So for example, right, if I'm trying to fake, right, a cut kick, boom, then I gotta be able to know how it looks like right before I go into that cut kick so I could replicate it. This is where having a mirror really comes in handy, because if you're able to see, okay, yeah, I lift my hip up like this before I kick, right? Then I'm able to sometimes maybe lift my hip up before I fake. Or if I'm looking to fake a back leg, I know that when I do my back leg, I push my back hip in and I turn my shoulder a little bit. So I could fake with pushing that hip in. Or I know if I'm faking that I'm trying to come in close, right? I could lower my stance like this, and that also replicates me coming in. But the most important thing is repetition in front of the mirror so that it could look natural. You don't want your kicks looking a certain way and then your fakes looking unnatural, because it's not gonna create the other person to bite. The second way to fake is using an actual kick that's setting up something else. So I could still throw out my front leg cut kick, okay? And if they run into it, okay, that's good for me. But if I'm actually trying to set up maybe a back kick, right? I throw my cut kick out there once, boom, right? Maybe I step a little bit, I bounce a little bit, and then I throw it out again, boom, right? I'm baiting them to cancel, or I'm baiting them to appa me, front leg roundhouse kick me under. So once I see that they're trying to bite on that, I could lift the front leg, right? And then I see they bite, and then I score that back kick defensively, okay? You could also use this with a front leg technique. I bring my front leg cut kick up once, boom, and I see they cancel me. Okay, all right, again, I do it. They cancel me. On the 3rd time, I bring it up looking like a cut kick to the body, but then I could bring it up high to the face like this. So how do I fight defensive players without getting countered? When fighting a defensive fighter, you have to understand that they're looking to counter you on your mistake or when you're not ready after you overextend. You have to make sure that you don't overextend into their distance, leaving yourself in an unready state or an unprepared state where they can easily score on you. So in order to do this, right, we're going to still stay proactive. We could keep the pressure, but we're not going to be overextending or over spamming our kicks, because we don't want to give them that little space to be able to score their counters. This is a great example. This is going to be from the 2014 Grand Prix in the finals against Lee Dae-hoon with Jawara Chab. This is a fight that I always used to watch when I was growing up. So I feel like it's a great example for how to counter a defensive fighter, because Jawara Chab, not necessarily he always fights defense, but in this situation, he's trying to keep his lead. He's trying to be defensive. In this clip, you're gonna see that he's lifting his front leg in a cut leg position, trying to catch Lee Dae-hoon on the way in. But instead of overextending or overcommitting and running into that front leg, Lee Dae-hoon, he keeps the pressure, but then once he sees that front leg is there, he's pushing off, and then he's trying to catch a short kick. He's giving a little bit space, and then he's trying to counter that counter himself. All right, so let's delve into this fight. Lee Dae-hoon, he's inching up, right? Pushes off, tries to use that left leg. Again, inching in with pressure, sees he's coming in, pushes off and uses that right leg. Pushes off and uses that right leg. And then at the end, boom. He sees that Achab is lifting that front leg, trying to wait for him to come in, right? But instead of rushing in body first, he uses his front hand defense, moves that leg out the way, and uses a nice lefty head kick to secure that lead. This is with around 3 to 4 seconds left, so he's up with 1 point at this time, and then he closes out this match beautifully, giving him that Grand Prix gold medal. If they're constantly going towards the edge of the ring, right, or they're constantly waiting for you to kick, that's when it's a game of who makes the mistake first. If you could see that they're trying to lead you in towards the corner, right, you could keep up with the pressure, but when it really gets to the scoring situations, you don't want to be overextending or running into them, just like Lee Dae-hoon. You want to be waiting and being patient and then get them out of their comfort zone, right? They feel comfortable with waiting for you to come in, right? So you want to make it so that you're not coming in when they think that you're coming in and you're forcing them to come out of the corner. That's going to be more uncomfortable for them, and it's going to create like an anxious feeling in their head. So then you could take advantage of that by using a counter once they come out of their strong suit. How to time hitting your opponent with the back kick. When looking to time a back kick, there's 2 different styles of timing. The first style would be looking actually for a key to give away that the kick is coming at you, right? So I would say that as a beginner, I would start off like this. If it's an open stance and I could see that they're trying to throw that back leg, I can focus on this back shoulder because I know that when they go to throw that back leg roundhouse kick, right, they're gonna turn that shoulder. And once I see that key, that's my key to throw that jumping back kick, right? So if I'm here, I'm waiting, I wait until I see it, and then boom, I can hit it like this. The second one would be an instinctive back kick, right? If you gain a lot of experience from throwing these back kicks, sometimes you don't have to look. You just know that the opponent is gonna be coming into you, and then you could just throw it without even second guessing yourself. This comes more with experience and instinct. So once you get down the timing or the different situations as many times as possible, it's going to become more like a second nature. So for example, if I'm using my front leg to pressure them and I get close enough, I know that they're just going to want to clench when it becomes like that not too close but not too far situation. If I get this close, I know that they're going to bite, and then I could just throw it off rip because my instincts are good enough to read that. So, right? We're starting off in a regular medium distance. I'm playing with this front leg, right? And then I get close enough. I know he's gonna wanna bite. And once he comes in, boom, then I can throw it. I know that he wants to come in because I just know the distance. I know the timing. I know which situations influence my opponent to come in, right? So those are 2 different ways. Start off with the first one with looking for keys. And then once you get used to it, then you can start throwing it off instinct. So we just covered how to time a back kick. Now we're gonna cover how to counter a back kick. So when looking to counter a back kick, I would break it down into 3 main ways. The first way would be aiming to cut the same side of the lower back that they're kicking with to prevent them from turning any farther, and then also covering up on my body to remain safe, right? So if you watch, when you go to throw a back kick, let's say he's trying to throw it with his right leg and he turns and he looks over his shoulder. If I cut his left side, it's gonna help him spin this way, right? And I don't want that. I don't want the kick to come close to me. So what I do is, when I see that he's turning, right, I'm aiming for the same side that he's kicking with. He's kicking with his right leg. I'm aiming for the right side of the lower back so that even if he throws it, I'm stopping him from turning. The second one would be where I'm taking a little bit more risk, but it's a similar concept. As he's going to turn and kick, I'm bringing my front leg axe kick over his shoulder to try and score those 3 points.
He's gonna spin.
And then finally, the third one would be when he goes to throw that back kick, I'm moving in the same direction as him, okay? So if he's spinning this way, right? He's turning his body. I don't want to move this way into it so I get scored on. I want to be moving in that same way. So he's spinning this way, I'm stepping this way, and then I have, boom, my inside shots that I could score on. In this situation, you could use the illusion step, which I also cover in my lightning footwork lab on the Taekwondo Fury Institution. And you can also use a triangle step as well. Over. And now, what's the best way to set up a spinning back hook kick? So when you're going to set up a spinning back hook kick, you can set it up in 2 ways. The first way is going to be offensive. So you want to be proactive, having your opponent on their back leg, reacting to you, lifting their front leg when you either give motion or you're coming into their distance. And once you could tell that they're biting on that, right, then you could slide into the distance and throw it offensively like this. So I'm in closed stance, I have some distance, I realize that when I motion or I give fakes, he's lifting that front leg. So once I realize that he's biting, I slide in, I see the front leg lifted like this, and then I could throw it offensively. Then the second way that you could set it up is defensively. So if you're up in the score, right? You're in the lead and there's not much time left. So the opponent is in a position where they have to come into you. You could realize that and then know that they're coming into you. So they have no other option. And then when they come in, then you're jumping and spinning with that back kick. So how do I increase the power of my kicks, especially my cut kick? So when you're looking to improve the power of your cut kicks, I will first start off with hip strengthening and core strengthening. There's a variety of exercises that you could use that are Taekwondo specific to make sure that your hips are mobile and strong enough to be able to execute these kicks, along with a variety of core strengthening techniques that will not only help you stay stable, but it'll help you on the rotational plane. For example, wall kicks and floor kicks are good for Taekwondo specific. Banded rotational exercise for the core, and also medicine ball throws will help you develop that sling. The next thing I will focus on is making sure that when you create contact with your target, all of your joints are in full extension. So that what that means is your core is tight, your knee is straight, your hip is straight, and you're getting into a full straight line. When you kick, you want to make sure that your hip and your knee isn't out of place. So if you feel like it's not pushing strong, a lot of times it comes into mechanics. When you go to throw that kick and your extension isn't at the right time, sometimes it'll look like this, right? Your hip is out, your knee is not pushing, and it'll slide off like this, or it might slide off like that, right? You have to train your mechanics, right? So that when you hit it, you're getting into full extension, right? So get a bag like this and then test out how it feels, right? Am I extending my knee too early and my hip is out? Am I extending my hip too early and my knee is out, right? Or if you're able to find it, that's when you find that sweet spot and you're able to really give it a nice push like that. So why do my legs feel heavy and dead after a few fights in a tournament? So this will come down to two main factors: your conditioning and your nutrition or fueling before and in between fights. Conditioning wise, I would say that Taekwondo is mainly an anaerobic sport, so it's filled with a lot of 5 to 10 explosive bursts of high intensity work, followed by a short rest in between. So in order to prepare for these bursts, you have to have a conditioning regimen that focuses on anaerobic stamina. For example, this is a basic version of something I cover in the infinite gas tank module of my Taekwondo Fury institution, where I go in depth. You can get on an air bike and do intervals of 15 seconds of max intensity work, followed by 45 seconds of active rest. Go for 6 to 12 rounds, 3 times a week for about at least a month, and see how much of a difference it makes. Next, nutrition wise, the night before the fight, you want to make sure that you're loading up on good clean carbs, medium protein and low fight, so you have no problems with digestion and you have a good carb base for energy for the next day. The morning of the fight, again, you want to have good clean carbs, low fat, and then in between your fights, you want to make sure that you're supplementing yourself with something that's going to be very easy to digest, but also a high carb, so something like sweet candy or Swedish fish, something like that. What are some good footwork drills for Taekwondo sparring? When focusing on footwork, you have to understand the basics. So to start off, you want to make sure that your heels are off the floor the entire time. This requires a great amount of ankle and calf strength. So I'm going to go over a few basic drills that will help you improve your footwork so that you can be a smoother fighter and also maneuver well during your fights. We're going to start off working on forward and backward movement, right? I'm going to show it from you sideways so you can see, right? I'm going to keep my heels up and I'm going to work on one forward and one back. So I can bounce and I can go forward, back, forward, back, forward, back, forward, back. Once I get into a rhythm, I could try 2 forward and 2 back. So I could go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. After that, I can start working on my sliding movements, right? So that's when instead of bouncing forward, it's more of a quick, sharp slide. So I'm picking up my front foot, pushing off the back foot to slide forward like this, boom, right? Once I'm able to do that, I could work in succession. So I'm moving forward with multiple slides. After that, you could also work on backward sliding. So I'm picking up my back foot, pushing off my front foot, boom. And same thing, you can work on multiple slides like this. After you get the basics down, you can start working on different planes. So working on sideways movements, right? You can work on your illusion step. You could take a triangle step, right? But again, I'm gonna cover this more in the Taekwondo Fury Institution. How do I kick higher? This is a very popular question with a lot of beginners, so I'm going to break it down into a few different parts. When you're aiming to kick higher kicks, you have to be able to understand that it doesn't just come from flexibility alone. You also have to have strength through range of motion so that you could keep your power and velocity of your kicks when it hits the highest point. The first thing I would say is to identify if it's a flexibility or a mobility issue. If it's a flexibility issue, then when you go to stretch, let's say your hamstrings, right? You come into the stretch and you feel tightness, you need to work a little bit more on passive stretching. So whether that be stretching just like this, right? Or you're taking a band and you're holding your leg over your head, or you're just simply stretching down like this, right? For each muscle, you have to work a little bit more on flexibility for passive work. If you feel like I'm already flexible, when I come down into this position, I don't really feel too much tightness. When I come down into the lunge, I don't feel too much tightness, then it's gonna be more of a mobility issue, right? A more strength through range issue. That's something that you could work on with either bands, or you could work on with the wall, right? If you're holding a wall, you can work on lifting your leg and then trying to boom, do hip pumps. You can also do it straight, try to keep your legs straight and then lift to work on those hip flexors, right? And that's gonna help create strength in your hip so that it's not only flexible, but you can keep control through the full range of the kick. And then finally, we're gonna work a little bit more on mechanics or the technique of the kick. You wanna understand that in order to kick high, you have to chamber high, right? So if my chamber is low, right? If my knee is only coming up this high, then I have to swing through to lift it up. And it's more of like a swinging motion. If you wanna kick high, you wanna make sure you bring that chamber nice and high. So then the distance between my foot and the target is much shorter. And then from there, boom, I just snap it out. So how to avoid getting hit with underkicks. The key to not getting scored on with the underkicks is remembering to stay proactive with your cuts and not reactive. You don't want them to be motioning or faking or stepping into your distance and you're reacting to them on your back foot and just lifting your leg in place. If you do that, they're able to carry their momentum forward, boom, and then score forward, okay? So I don't want you guys to do that. I want you guys to make sure that you're either cutting first, or when you see that they step into the distance, right? The most important thing, this is my tip. This bottom foot has to slide forward with you. If I lift it in place, right? I'm staying stationary, they come into my distance, and then boom, they're able to score. But if as I see that I'm using this bottom foot, right? And I'm pushing my hips into it, I'm using my momentum as well, then yes, they could use their momentum and slide in, but I'm gonna match that same momentum. And once their back leg leaves the floor and they're only balancing on one leg, I could push into them, right? So instead of staying stationary, I see it's coming, I move the bottom foot, and then I see it's coming up, and then boom, I push them back. Again, I see that they're kicking, and then boom, I push them back like this. This gives me a much better cut kick, and it prevents them from being able to reach me. And then I also want to make sure that I have my arms to cover up just in case they do. So again, right, bottom foot moves when they kick. I see that they're kicking, pushing it in, and then my hand is here to block as well. How to cut weight fast before a competition. When cutting weight for a competition, the best thing to do is to start your weight cut out several weeks to months so that you're not really depleting your body of energy and putting it into shock right before you fight. You don't want to be focused on cutting weight, you want to be focusing on your technique, your tactics, right? Keep in mind that when you go to international G-rank competitions, they don't weigh you once, they also have a random weigh-in on the day of competition, and you have to be within 5% of your weight class on the day of if you get picked randomly. And if you don't, you get disqualified. So you can't be cutting a ton of weight and then eating a ton after and being over your weight class, because if you get picked, you're not able to fight. Now, with that being said, if you go through a healthy diet weeks and months before and you're still a few kilos over on the week of your competition, right? Then what you would do is called a water loading and water cut. So it's gonna start off with taking in 4 to 8 liters of water a day. It depends on each person. You're also gonna lower your sodium intake and lower your carb intake. So that's gonna help you, your body not retain carbs, and it's gonna put your body into a water flushing mode, right? So if I take in a lot of water, I'm gonna be putting out a lot of water, whether it be by sweating, by breathing, right? I even lose weight or vapor from me breathing, and then also obviously from going to the bathroom. Once I'm in that flushing mode, right, for about a week, the day before you weigh in is when you're gonna cut all of the remaining kilograms. So if I'm in that flushing mode, the day before I weigh in, I stop eating, I stop drinking, I hit the sauna, or I put on a sauna suit or a parka or whatever it may be, and I sweat out that weight by elevating my body temperature. And then also me being in that flushing mode, I'm able to cut that water weight a lot easier. After, right, you want to make sure that you have a good rehydration program. So if I cut 3 kilos before, if I walk around at 71 kilos and I'm fighting 68 kilos, right? I cut those 3 kilos by doing the water loading, and then I water cut on the day before. I weigh in successfully. I want to make sure that I'm rehydrating and refueling correctly and healthily, so then that way when I step into the mats the next day, I don't feel depleted. I'll cover that closely or briefly in just this next session. You want to make sure that the next day you're fighting at that same weight. So if I walk around at 71 kilograms, I want to make sure that I'm 71 kilograms after I rehydrate. How do I rehydrate? I want to be making sure that I take in all of that water that I lost. I want to put in electrolytes in there, such as Pedialyte or Gatorlyte or whatever it may be. I also want to take in a lot of carbs and low fat and also a medium amount of protein. You can also throw some amino acids in there as well. But all of this nutrition and hydration stuff, we're going to be covering in our newest project. So make sure you guys tune in. This is crucial for the modern day game. What's the difference between KPNP and Daedo scoring systems, and why aren't my kicks scoring? So first you have to understand how the systems work. Daedo is magnets in the foot sensors, and KPNP is electronic proximity sensors. So I'm gonna start off with Daedo, right? When you're looking to score with Daedo, you wanna aim to dig in the magnets into the hogu whenever you're going to kick, right? So for example, if I'm going to kick a cut kick, right? There's a sensor on the back of my heel and also on the arch of my foot. So I want to take that sensor on the bottom of my heel, and when I kick, right, I don't want to be tapping it like this. I want to be digging the heel in and smearing it forward. So it creates an indent in this chest gear in the hogu, right? A bend in the hogu, and then I'm able to push that magnet in. Same thing when I'm going for a back leg roundhouse kick, right? I don't want to snap it like this. I want to pull my toes up at the end, so I'm digging that foot in and then creating a dent in the hogu, okay? You also have to know what are the best parts to score on the Daedo, right? On the Daedo, this front part, it doesn't score very well, besides right here where the numbers are, on the lower part. The sides, right over here, the sides are going to be where you're going to score the easiest, right? Especially for cut kicks. And then also on the Daedo, if you look on the back side, the sensors wrap all the way around. So when you're going to kick like an inside kick, a lot of times it's better to hit the backside than it is to hit the front side. Now, moving on to KPNP. It's a proximity sensor. So what does that mean? My hand or my foot, right? It does not have to make contact with the chest gear to score. So that means that even if he's blocking, if I see that he's blocking, I can hit him. If I hit him hard enough, boom, and my foot is there within proximity, but it pushes his block into the chest gear itself, that will still score. When you're actually looking to hit the chest gear though, you don't want to look for a smear or a push too much like Daedo. For the KPNP, you want to be able to snap that kick. The more snap and pop you have on it for the proximity sensor, it's going to register a little bit well, okay? So if I'm going for a back leg roundhouse kick on the KPNP, I can snap it out. I could go boom like this. Or if I'm looking for a front leg, right, I could snap it out like this, right? Same thing with the cut kick. I'm not looking to push deep into it, right? I could kind of just pop it off like this, and that scores well. Next, for the KPNP, you also have to know that there's only sensors from the side to the side. So if you turn around over here, right, on the back, there's no sensors. So if you get to the inside, right, into the clinch, you want to make sure that you're not hitting this side, you're switching feet and then hitting this open and side over here. KPNP, just like Daedo, it scores a little bit better on the sides than it does the front, but it's not as bad on the front. So you can still hit the front and score. If you found this breakdown helpful and you're looking to improve your sparring game, I want you to check out the video right here. It's a 48-minute long free training session breaking down the 33 advanced sparring tactics that you could use to dominate your next sparring championship.